Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the herd. We are here for a special event today. This is not our normal day, obviously. I am here today with our special guest, Robert Schwalb, who is the creator of my favorite dark fantasy RPG, Shadow of the Demon Lord. Also, the first game that's gotten me to actually be able to, shall we say, maneuver some of my players away from certain other games that shall not be named. It has been an incredibly uh I love horror. And the last 24 hours have been quite the banquet. Yesterday we talked about deconstructing horror and defining it last night. This morning I got to play a horror demo game and scream like a girl live on YouTube. And then I got to see Iron Lung this afternoon, which I will be putting out a review for. I never ever review movies, but I'm going to make an exception in this case. And today I get to talk with the fabulous Mr. Schwab.
Well, hello
Welcome.
there.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
I want to say a quick hello to the chat, and then we will find out all about your illustrious and rather long career.
Mm.
Um, we, I always make this joke that Legatus is usually the first one in our chat, but today the Witch Queen has beat him out. So welcome to the Witch Queen. And welcome to Wolf, who was on the show last night. He says, could not miss this. Yes, Evie Mux must sleep with the fishes. I am totally spacing the name of the game that this gentleman is responsible for, and I feel really bad about that because I spend an awful lot of time talking to them about it. And Vicky, who is his partner in crime. We have Nakoti, who is brand new to the chat. Welcome. Good to see you here. Gayo, who is a channel member. YouTube has finally seen fit to recognize me to allow memberships through. And Rob wants to say, hey, Rob, couldn't miss this. Good to see you. Hi there, goat and all. So how long have you been working in the role-playing industry?
Oh boy, 24 years. Is that right? 24 years, 24, almost 25 years. It feels more like 50, but it is firmly in the 24, 25 range. Yeah, long time.
Is this one of those where every time people have asked me how long I've been gaming, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that much math.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, it's similar, right? I mean, because there's so much. I probably have been working in the industry longer than I was playing without the industry, without working in it. That makes sense. So, yeah, I've been doing the whole ultra nerd thing since I was maybe 10. And so 41 years later, here I am. Who knew?
I mean, you have a job that most people would dream of if they were a nerd, though. I understand from people who are actually in the industry that it is quite hair pulling at times.
It can be for sure. And I think, it's one of those things where uh, the cliche about if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. It's more like if you do what you love, you stop loving it, and that's kind of one of the perils you have to kind of keep trying to avoid as you dig in. There have been times when I have really been ready to throw myself in front of a moving bus over a bad review or a frustrating piece of game design or the inability to try to generate the words that I need for this particular project that's got a looming deadline. But then there are also the good points too that are the when things are singing and when my mind's working the way it's supposed to work and I'm sitting at the bar and I'm drinking my beers and I'm scribbling in my notebook and figuring out the math and this really cool thing that I want to have happen. Those are the moments you live for.
Nice. I'm surprised to hear you say that you sometimes have trouble with deadlines because I have frequently thought, since I've actually been following you on socials, that you must write faster than anyone I've ever met in my life.
So I'm not sure if it's so much speed as it is sacrifice of everything else. So when I started, I was in the freelance trenches, and there was when you're working for 2-3 cents a word and you're trying to make it worthwhile, you've got to write a lot. So I would take just about any job I could get my hands on in order to kind of make it worth doing. And it wasn't. And then when I landed the job at Green Renine Publishing, there was a lot of that imposter syndrome going on. So I would work 60 to 80 hour weeks, even though Chris and Nicole were very clear to tell me not to work that hard. I would still work 60 to 80 hour weeks uh, and do all that stuff. And then by the time I moved on from Green Renine and started working for Wizards, I was responsible for 40,000 words a month of content, and that is a whole lot. It's I think in RPG book terms, it's like 64 pages. Uh, and I did that for a number of years, and then now that I've got my own company, I try to get I aim for 15,000 words a week, but it depends. I mean, the last couple of months have been tricky. We've had a sick cat who just crossed the Rainbow Bridge last week, and
Yeah,
so
I saw that.
yeah,
Sorry
so
to
there was a
hear
lot
that.
of time. Thank you. A lot of time spent with her, and so I'm trying to dig myself uh, out of the hole, so to speak. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's but fear is a driver. It's the whip that cracks. It's the one that keeps me going. And fear of failure, of not living up to my potential, not and disappointing people, I think, is another thing that keeps me going.
I mean, you seem to turn out like a book every week or two, so unless you just happen to have a lot of projects that finished up at near the same time.
Well, so the strategy for my company has been to release smaller, focused content at a regular basis, so
Mhm.
that we would release. So I try to release something every Monday for one of the various game lines. Next week we have Shadow of the Red Moon's Skin of the Game. It's an adventure, novice adventure. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 8 things all ready to go ahead of time, and then I've got 2 things on the what I like to call the drawing rack, which is where I've done the first draft, and then I'll go back and clean it up, and then shift it over to editing and art and all the other stuff. And then I've got about 50 more projects just waiting to be done.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is that is a lot.
it's a lot. But
So going back over your resume, I noticed that even before you started Shadow of the Demon Lord, a lot of your writing is, shall we say, darker toned. Uh, have you always had a love of horror? Is this something that kind of came with role playing? Do you enjoy horror in other mediums?
yes, to all the above. What I think the kind of one of the things that was central to my development as a human being was the conditions in which my parents raised me. My mom is very religious, and she was of the opinion that there are dark forces all around, and they're tempting us and trying to get us to to steal our souls away and do all that stuff. So I lived in fear of supernatural threats throughout my when I was from as young as when I was 2 or 3, all the way up until I finally got sick of it. But so I kind of grew up in that environment where the world's going to end at any time. God's going to kill all the animals, and all these terrible things are going to happen, and it's all because we're just rotten sinners. And so that was just a lot for me to kind of have to grapple with. And so rather than let that consume me, it kind of actually fostered an interest in what those things would look like that are trying to destroy everything. And so when I would run role playing games, I always leaned toward dark, grimy, nasty, sometimes funny, often funny, usually sometimes so pretty horrific, and that was very cathartic for me through just running games, and so that translated perfectly well into my writing in careers. And the career is that so that I was able to use all that kind of negative energy and use it to produce all sorts of filthy things. And I guess I started off my early career. I was focused on like I did a book on witches, and I did a book on unholy warriors, and then I was on the Book of Fiends, and then and so it just kind of got a reputation for being the go-to guy for evil, nasty stuff. To the point that they used to call me Doctor Evil at Green Ronin because I would never fall short in coming up with something to horrify or offend. So that was kind of my thing. So then it kind of went on. That carried with me through Warhammer, the Warhammer era when I worked on Tome of Corruption, and then it also shows up in my work on D&D with the Tyrants of the Nine Hells and the Book of Vile Darkness for fourth edition, and so on. So yeah, I love to play around with the stuff that deserves to die.
So, I have to ask because it seems like you were the correct generation. Did you get caught up in the Satanic Panic?
Very much so. When I guess I started playing in sixth grade, and I became hooked on D&D. It's all I talked about. It's all I thought about. I'd write stuff for my characters. I made my own role playing game, and all this other stuff that kind of along went with this. And my mom was very concerned about my seeming obsession with this new hotness, and or it wasn't new. It wasn't new at that point, but it was new to me. And so she, of course, consulted with whatever God bothers that she was talking to. Eventually, decided that Dungeon Dragons was evil, and it was a tool of Satan to infiltrate my mind and mislead me into the clutches of Satan. And so she was okay with me playing any other role playing game, but not Dungeons and Dragons. And so, because I couldn't play Dungeons and Dragons, we played everything else. And rather than blunting my affection for role playing games, it just kicked the doors wide open. And I got to play all sorts of stuff from the first edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay to Hidden Kingdoms, which is a really cool ancient game. I was there for Shadowrun and Cyberpunk GURPS, did it all. Twilight 2000. And it was neat because what it gave that opportunity, though I think that my mom's choice did close off an avenue of exploration for me, it did open up so many doors to things that I probably never would have looked at otherwise. So it was cool for me to be playing a character in a spaceship because the spaceship doesn't have Satan or devils or demons in it, unless I'm running the game. And then, right. But, brownies? No, brownies are evil. So that was kind of the thing.
Yeah, I've always found that attitude a little interesting since most of until the more recent D&D editions where you have like, warlocks, uh demons were there to be like fought and overcome and destroyed. I always found it
Right.
really fascinating that this somehow the fact that they existed in the game at all
Yeah. I mean,
was what was important, not what their role was.
I mean, I think to some extent, I think that you're looking for something that's probably not there. I mean, certainly D&D, especially AD&D, those books did contain like a whole. I mean, there were spells like what Caco Demon, and there were some spells inside of the Player's Handbook that were probably dodgy and looked occultish. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. There's not really a sense that aside from playing a chaotic evil assassin, there really aren't opportunities inside of first edition D&D for you to go and live out your darkest fantasies, I suppose. But yeah, I think in the modern shift, like, and I say modern, I mean third edition, so that's dating me, I guess. Third edition's introduction of the warlock and some of the esoteric stuff that we fooled around with in Tome of Magic really kind of shift, and that's part of it. And then I think Eric Mona, who's works for Paizo, and his work on kind of steering the Dragon Dungeon magazines really also kind of laid groundwork for kind of exploring the darker corners of D&D and did some really interesting things. And we're for D&D fans today, they're fortunate due to his and others' efforts to try to really shine a light on what evil could look like in D&D.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I mean, I could probably do an entire another panel on what is evil, like we did what is horror yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
um, but it just, I mean, when you're in kind of the original edition and AD&D, because I am also dating myself here. Um, those are what I played with, and being heroic was like I remember when the anti-paladin came out, and it was this huge thing
Yeah.
because being heroic had always been the point of the game.
Right.
Paladins were paladins had a very specific role, and they were always lawful good. Um, and they made other people hate them.
Yep.
So, what was the first thing that you ever wrote professionally?
I did a book for Mongoose. Please, please, please do not go look for it. But it was called The Quintessential Witch. During the early days of D20, for those folks who were not big fans then, there was this boom of content that came out that resulted from the OGL and the system reference document. And so publishing houses were formed seemingly overnight and got into the business of generating additional content for D&D, good or bad. And so it flooded the market with adventures and source books, and then existing games would be relaunched as D20 compatible. I mean, we saw there was World of Darkness by Monty Cook. That was a D20 game, and then there was also Call of Cthulhu, also by Monty. And I know Deadlands had a D20 version, and it continues. So there were a lot more books and more opportunities than there were writers. So I just happened to be at the right place at the right time and was able to sneak in and pitch that first book to Mongoose. And I can't look at that book now. I mean, it's a long time ago. I mean, I wrote that thing a very long time ago, and the standards for what I would consider good art were a lot different than they are now. So there's a lot of cheesecake in that book and in the other books I did for them, and that's fine. But then I landed a gig with Green Ronin, and at that time I had been working with Alderac Entertainment and Necromancer Games, Kenzer and Company, Fantasy Flight, and so I was able to get enough work to kind of keep things rolling. But it was through the Ronins that I was able to get enough work that they eventually decided that maybe this Rob guy could be useful, and we're gonna push him into this. We're gonna offer him this developer role, which I happily took, and so I became the line developer for the D20 product lines that Green Ronin was publishing at the time. And that included Black Company and Red Star and all the other stuff. It was fun, but those early days were crazy because I'd work from 4 in the morning until 2 in the morning just about every day, and just really just push it out and push myself to learn what I was doing to kind of make all those early mistakes and develop a reputation for being someone who can turn over clean text and be on time.
Hmm. Yeah, I have heard that in the industry, the deadline issue can be rough, both for writers and for the companies themselves. Have you run into that? It sounds like you've got a pretty stringent work ethic, but
Yeah, I mean, when I was developing, we were pretty good about the people I worked with were pretty good about turning over on time, and I also learned pretty early on that you give an earlier deadline than you really need. So instead, if you don't need the text for 6 weeks, then you need it in 4 weeks or whatever, and that
hmm.
gives you a little bit of play. And then also because my job as a developer also meant that I was a designer as well. If something fell through the cracks, I could always step in and do the fill writing and do the additional design that we're missing. Or if somebody turned over something that wasn't publishable, and we're under a time crunch, then usually meant the developer had to step in and do the work over again. With my company, it's different because I have a release schedule, but I don't make it public facing. That way, if I need a gap or a break, or we have a hiccup on a piece of art, or if there's a death or something like that kind of throws the wrench, we can push things back. And so I try not to go too far to talk too far out about what's coming, because it's like I've got Shadow of the Demon Lord 666 as a new game, but I don't want to pin that down to a year yet. I mean, it might
Hmm.
be 27, it might be 28. We'll see.
So I can't ask you when Dungeons of the Dam is going to be completely available on Foundry then.
I don't know when it's going to be completely available on Foundry. I can tell you, and I will give you a potential look. The last of the Dungeons of the Damned comes out as a PDF. It's scheduled to come out March 30th. And it is a beast. That last one is nasty. The last three are nasty. But I think those will probably follow on Foundry as soon as my partner can crank those out. So hopefully it won't be that far along, but won't be that far after.
I have two different groups running through it right now. So
Mm,
one of them is on the first level, so I'm not concerned about them. But the other one is cranking through the third one pretty good. So
okay, well, 8, 9, and 10 all come out almost back to back. We have a release
there
separating each one of them.
there are 10. Okay, for some reason, from when you released 7, I was under the impression that was the last one. Um,
Yeah, no, we were going to do 11, in fact, for this. And then I just realized that I'd need to get these storylines wrapped up. So we cut it. We cut the last one down to 10. Orc Wars will be 11. And that's my new focus right now. And then after that, Return of the Witch King. And then Return of the Witch King and Orc Wars will end around the same time, schedule wise. And that will put a pretty nice bow on Shadow of the Demon Lord. Although I will have some Black Star projects to still come out. We have one each of the remaining lines: Blight Scars, Evil Relics, Book of Salvation, and Wicked Cults. They'll each get a capstone piece, which will be a little bit longer, probably about 12 to 15, 12 to 16 pages to kind of clean up and end all those lines so that Demon Lord could lay fallow long enough for people to play through what's already out there, and then give me time to do the design for the next. What it's not really a new edition, but it's the evolution of the game. How about that?
yeah, I like putting it that way better because I really like the edition you have now, and I'm just kind of getting it to run the way I like it to run.
Sure.
So every time I do that with another game, they put out another edition, and then I'm like, now I have to learn it all over again.
Well, so this has been, by the time it comes out, it'll be 12 or 13 years since it released, and it will be fully backwards compatible.
Ah, okay. I think what have I been running? 4 or 5 years. I've been since I discovered Shadow of the Demon Lord.
Awesome.
Um, I one of the reasons that your game stands out for me so much is there's a couple reasons. One is that I try really hard to not be driven by the art because there are so many books out there that have great art, but they're terrible games.
Mm-hmm.
They're fun collectors pieces, but that's running them is not something you want to do on a regular basis. Shadow of the Demon Lord has some really fabulous art to it that really sets the tone well. That's the other thing is that some of the art doesn't always set the tone for the game well. Um, and the other thing is, I am kind of notorious for the fact that I don't like pre-made adventures. I like making up my own stuff.
Sure.
Um, I can count unless I'm at convention, which is a different story. Because I run a ton of indie games at convention, and I'll run like 12 games in a weekend,
Oh
and
wow.
I cannot come up with 12 games for conventions, so I will use
No.
pre-mades. I will use pre-mades for those. Um, but Dungeon of the Dam is the first pre-made adventure that I have ever been absolutely obsessed with. So,
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I've had so much fun working on it. And it came about totally by accident. I guess it was we were in the thick of the pandemic, and I was having a show like this with my Italian publishers, and they were like talking about what I was planning on doing in the future, and then my friend Max, he's like, you should do a mega dungeon, one for every level, and I'm like, all right, fine, I'll do it, and that's where it came from, and so I've been working on it ever since. But it has been an opportunity for me to create some really tough situations and really kind of bring that Demon Lord vibe front and center, more than just the village in peril. It gives you environments that really
oh,
kind of reflect
it's
where my
vicious.
head's at. Yeah, I
Yeah,
want it
it's
to be
vicious.
Good.
Even the first level is vicious. So what I read through the first one, and I was like, most of my players for that first game were really new. So what I did was have them take refuge with a bunch of other refugees, um, in a mine that then led into the dungeon. Uh, and they literally have just labeled them like the meat suits, so that when one one of them dies, they just take on another refugee.
Right. Sure.
Um, they're down to 2 meat suits, just for the record.
Well, oh my, they're down to 2.
Well,
Yikes.
part of this is because they did a couple of dumb things early on, and they allowed most of their meat suits to get killed off. So
So now
they
they're
became
just,
they became meat shields instead of meat suits.
you're right. Right. Mm.
um, but what I love about it is the fact that there are so many really rigid adventures. I don't like GMs that railroad. I don't like to be a railroader. Um, but most adventures are written, GM does A, players do B or C if play. They're written like choose your own adventure books.
Right.
Especially once 5e came out, that became a real big thing. Um, and I love the fact that yours is so open. Like, they can kind of wander, they can make mistakes, though their mistakes are almost always deadly. Um,
Yeah, I've really tried to adhere to an older, maybe not a different style of adventure writing. And I think that in defense of D&D and the not that I have really any experience with their adventures. I think I worked on one and I only did a small piece of it. But their target audience is the largest slice, the largest piece of the pie, and that encompasses such a wide range of players. So that I think that they've got to make sure that their adventure, their story content, has to be accessible by novice dungeon masters to old veterans. But and I know you know this. Um, but I think that what happens as a result is that if everything looks that way, then they're all going to be that way, right? So then everyone's going to be running into that same kind of, this is your first big campaign, and we have to go through all this front matter again, and it can be kind of tedious. Now, I mean, with mine, it's because I keep trying to, and I'm not, and I don't want to say they're bad adventures. I think some of them are really quite good. I've though I've not played them, I have been looking through them, and every time there's a release from Where's the Coast, I always make sure to grab it and devour it and see what cool stuff they're coming up with. So that aside, because I don't want to sound like it being a jackass or anything. With my own adventures, I aim for as tight a focus as I can, so we get a play experience that can fit usually within one sitting, and then maybe 2 at most. But then give you the bare bones of what's kind of going on, and then developing stuff around it so that people have place to explore, or at least give the game master inspiration to develop their own sidetracks using material that I can just kind of seed in. But it's a tricky. I've never been good at writing adventures. I always find the process of getting started to be difficult, and then also trying to account for all the possible different variables that might show up at a table. I just find it very, very unfulfilling. However, I make more adventures than I do anything else these days, so there we are.
um, I want to back up a little bit. We had a few things in the comments that I want to go over. First of all, I want to thank Goofus very much for their $7.99 Australian donation. Thank you for the many wonderful things you've created over the years. You have brought enjoyment to my life and the lives of many others.
Oh, thank you.
Goofus is not only a member, but a huge supporter of the channel, and we appreciate them very much. And they're just an all round, generally nice person. I have had the fortune of talking to them outside of chat.
Excellent.
Witch Queen says, that's something I've struggled with I can talk, really I can. That's something I have struggled with in the adventures I wrote for Postmortem Studios. It's really hard to write a module that isn't at least somewhat linear.
Yeah, that's a whole thing, and it is one of the big struggles when you think about. Well, if you want to have a broader adventure, then you're looking at the potential for wasted content, and when you're working within a finite space, 5,000 words, there isn't a whole lot of room to kind of cover all the stuff. One of the things that when I was working at Wizards of the Coast, I remember James Wyatt and some others had come up with this other way of looking at adventure design. And the best way for me to describe it is kind of like this well. And so the well at the very bottom of the well is where you want them to end up. And then each ring, then you surround that well with the bottom circle, the destination, with a series of circles. And those circles are going to give you different scenes that allow you to either move around the circle or move down closer to the destination. And that style of building adventures is super handy when you're doing more of when you want to make sure you want to have equal time for exploration and some role playing, rather than just be a series of combat encounters. It is really, really tricky though to try to make sure that you're not just throwing a bunch of words that are never going to get used because the way forward's too obvious. But I mean, that said, there are ways you can conceal linearity, and that is going to be by giving players meaningful ways to impact the story's development. So how characters handle one particular scene could make a future scene easier or harder, just based on what clues they find. But it's tough.
And we have Blackwater, who is kind of new to the herd and new to the gaming. Apparently, he has his lady friend is a gamer, and so he's kind of learning. He says he still doesn't know who Robert Schwalb is. So
Yeah.
I realized I did not have you give us kind of a quick intro rundown. I know who you are. Everyone should know who you are.
Maybe not everyone. All right. So, yeah, my name is Robert Schwalb. I have been working in tabletop role playing since 2002. I started out working as a freelancer. I graduated, then I landed a job at Green Running Publishing. They make Mutants and Masterminds and a variety of other cool games. From there, my job entailed working on all the D20 things. I eventually took over the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay line. I helped out and pitched in on the Dark Heresy role playing game, which was produced by Black Industries. And then I went to work for Wizards of the Coast as a freelancer and a contract designer. And there I worked on stuff for third edition, fourth edition, and fifth edition. I was part of the design team for fifth edition, uh, and then games. And then after that, I wrapped up and started my own company. And now I make truly evil, awful games.
I think they're fabulous games, but I also have a rather because you have to understand the first role playing game I ever ran was the first edition of Cult.
Oh wow, that's a lot to live up to.
um, yeah, I used to run the gaming convention at the college I attended, mainly because this was one of those places where no one actually wanted to take like responsibility for things. So
Mm-hmm.
someone else ran the first one my freshman year. I helped out, and then I made the mistake of not showing up when they voted who was going to be in charge of the next one. So for the next 10 conventions,
Oh my goodness.
and about the third convention I ran, the players for one of the games showed up and said, "Our GM skipped out with our table money and has just left. What do we do?" And I said, "Well, I guess I'm running a game.
Yeah. Oof.
Give me 5 minutes to find somebody to cover the table." So I had recently been running Cult. Um, or I'd been reading it. I apologize. I'd been reading it. Um, and so I threw together something really fast, ran for 4 hours. And at the end of it, they said, "If we cancel our afternoon game, can we keep playing?" And I ran that game
Nice.
for the next 5 years.
Very nice. Very, very nice.
um, and there began my love of horror role playing games.
Yeah.
And actually, I have to say, and I don't mean to do like too much kissing up here, but Shadow of the Demon Lord is the first thing I've discovered that I like running better than Cult as far as horror goes. So,
Awesome. Well, thank you.
um,
And I've
mainly
just
because
got the.
sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say mainly because while I love Cult, getting people through the character generation for the first edition was really hard, and I don't like the fourth edition. Your
Okay.
character generation is much, much easier, and players enjoy it more. And they like the advancement and the fact that it's really heavy on the role play more.
Cool. Yeah, that was kind of that. Trying to keep the barrier to entry as low as possible has been a design goal through all the games because I really don't want one of the things that I really got tired of working on D&D was just the stack of books that you have to get over in order to have your character ready to go, and letting the decisions that you make, uh, the chunking decisions into paths so that you're not having to sift through a bunch of smaller pieces, really kind of helps make it run faster and lets people play and get into the guts. Because the goal here is that people not just to read this book on their toilet, but rather to play it, and that's what I'm after.
Um, yeah, I think the fact too that I think that horror tropes are showing up more and more in role playing, and I do love the fact that you kind of steer clear of some of the really overused ones.
Yeah.
Um,
Which ones are you specifically?
I mean, as much as I love Lovecraft, I think the
Oh,
whole
sure.
uh, Eldritch God thing is becoming a little. I was saying last night that, Lovecraft described Cthulhu in these kind of vague, dreamy terms, and then people
Right.
started painting him, and now they make plushies out of him, and he's a lot less scary.
Much less scary. Right. Right. It's the cosmic horror angle is something I really dig, but and I appreciate Lovecraftian mythos as much as the next person, but I think I'm not really interested in going down that same road. It's pretty well paved. I am more interested in the Thomas Ligotti approach to cosmic horror, and Tales of the Dead Dreamer and Grim Scribe are some of my favorite collections of awful fiction. It's great. And of course, The Conspiracy Against the Human Race, which is my personal Bible, is also a good inspiration for the kind of stuff that I do.
So I asked this question last night on the horror panel. How would you define horror?
I don't have. I'm not sure. I can. It's kind of like the elephant in the shed. It's like I can tell you about parts of it, but I don't know if I can actually summarize the entire beast. Um, I think that it's just it's a realization of rather it is kind of the slow realization of your own powerlessness. I think that's as close as I can get.
Yeah, I have argued for a long time that 5e does not do horror well because powerlessness is one of the defining terms for me of horror, and it's hard
Yeah,
to feel powerless when you have like 100 hit points.
yeah, and that I mean that was the thing that with Weird Wizard was that because I was trying to make a heroic game, you're not going to have your characters are never really at that point where they're teetering on the edge of the pit. Uh, Characters have a lot more things to play with. They're tougher. They're more resilient. They can do more things. Where Demon Lord is very much like, well, yeah, you can do some stuff, but it's one of those things where it's like, well, the further you go, and the more you the more you screw around, it's gonna eat you. It's and that's kind of the thing about Demon Lord is that it's not I want to punish people for exploring, but I love the idea of making things gradually worse the deeper one goes.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, Shoot, I just had another question I was going to ask you, and I've completely spaced on what it was. I I think I love your elephant in the shed idea. I tend to describe it as the porn thing. I don't always
Oh,
know.
right.
I can't always define it, but I know it when I see it.
You know when you see it, right? For sure, for sure.
Um, I do think that, a sense of hopelessness and a sense of the unknown is really important.
Right. And when I also find that taking a pointer from Glenn Cook's Black Company series, horror games, especially in fantasy, when you're presented with a variety of choices and all of them come at a cost. That's interesting to me, right?
Um, yeah.
When you can do this, but it's gonna cost you personally, it's gonna cost somebody else, and so there's a sense of almost feel bad. Yeah,
How do you feel? So I know that there have been a lot of kind of old-fashioned or old-style comedians that have said, you can't really put limits on comedy because then, if one thing can't be made fun of, then nothing can be made fun of. Um, how do you feel about this kind of idea? Like, all right, let me give you an example. I'm from Maine. Stephen King is what we're known for.
sure.
There are so many, uh, like if you look at magazines submission requirements, there are so many limitations on what you can write. Animals can't be harmed, children can't be harmed. There are certain subjects you can't cover, which to me, I mean, the reason Stephen King was successful was because he ventured into the things that made people really uncomfortable. Uh, and nowadays, it seems like there's more and more limitation on that. How do you feel about these limitations kind of being pressed into what you can and can't write? Does that affect your writing at all?
Well, yes and no. To be, on the one hand, I am very upfront about what I'm making, right? So I'll tell people it's like this is not D&D. This is going to have some gross out stuff, and it's going to have some body horror. It's going to have some awful scenarios, no good outcomes, and so on. But there are also limits on what I'm willing to do personally, right? It's like anybody who has read my stuff will probably note that I've never done harm to animals, for example, because I just think that for me is in poor taste, and it doesn't interest me. But kids, sure, we've several adventures where there are terrible things that happen to kids, uh, and mostly it's because it's well, and in fact, I don't think I do it as much as some of the freelancers did for me. I think like the Devil's Wet Nurse or the Demon's Wet Nurse, which was by Stan, that's got a demon baby in it, and then Steve Kenson did an adventure that had an evil dryad that was ensorceling the children of the village, and so there's some of that stuff there too. But I also think that I think we should have the ability to say and do what we want, but I also think that it comes with responsibility that there are consequences.
Hmm.
And so, with that in mind, I think it behooves us as writers to give some, let the people know the apple of rye. Thank you. Let people know ahead of time what you're doing. I mean, this is going to be like there's an adventure we did by Miranda Horner, um, which was about a ghost haunting this house. And she is kind of anchored there because of an abusive situation with her lover. And she's there. And so the characters have to kind of solve the mystery and figure out what happened to her in order to free her. And that was one of those where it was like, well, the abuse is a really tough subject for a lot of people. And so we should be upfront about what the topic is.
Yeah. Um, so one of my favorite, well, probably my favorite comedic horror movie is Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, really, when you look at it, that is like killing teenagers for the good of the world.
Right.
And
Right.
which is, they are still technically children. And most slasher films, in fact, people will say, "Oh, killing children is terrible in a horror story," but we'll watch slasher films all the time, and they're usually supposed to be high school students. Uh, so I find it sort of interesting where that disconnect lies. That
Yeah.
people will
I mean,
take that casually.
there's a book. I don't even have it. I can't see it. Let me see if I can use my other pair of glasses. Uh, I can't see it from here. Anyway, there's a book that's talking about it's basically feminism in slasher films, and it's a really interesting read. about how these movies work and why they work and the ways they work. And the one thing about slasher films that's always stuck with me is this idea that it is actually some sort of Protestant guilt violence to kind of lash out against people who stray outside of the lines of whatever your religious or moral values might be. This is certainly well trodden road, but I think there's a certain we permit slasher films to do what they do because these kids have in some way earned it, right? Look at Texas Chainsaw Massacre, for example, dope smoking or drinking or having sex or whatever else. And they've done all these things that violate whatever good and wholesomeness is. And so the final girl, of course, becomes the embodiment of that virtue, who is spared the vengeful killer. But when you have something like Weapons, which is not that at all, but you have these kids who are victimized by this witch, spoilers, sorry, that's a totally different thing. And I think it works at a whole different level, in the sense that it makes me feel more uncomfortable watching that situation, because I know these kids did nothing to earn their fate, even if I don't agree with what would have passed judgment on the kids at the sleepaway camp or whatever movie we're watching. So it is an interesting yes, I agree.
Yeah.
It's a
As a side note, Ruby wants to know how your cats are doing.
Well, they're all doing really well. We said goodbye to our cat, the devil cat, last Wednesday. She was 23 years old, and she crossed over the rainbow bridge. Yep, she was an evil cat, but we had to say goodbye. But the rest of them are doing really well. They're all pretty happy, well fed.
My Nana had a cat that lived to 21, and I thought that was impressive.
That is impressive. Yeah, I can't believe. I think the devil cat lived on pure vinegar, pure hatred.
I tend to take in a lot of strays with terrible health issues, so unfortunately, mine.
Right.
I don't get that much time. So have you seen Cabin in the Woods?
Yes, I have.
So what I found interesting about that was they make it very blatant that these are the certain vices that need to be
Right,
killed for
right, right.
this particular ceremony to have. But they also make it very clear that they are willing to fake those vices. Like the final girl is actually the one who's been having an affair with one of her teachers,
Right.
and it's her friend that gets cast in the blonde bimbo nympho mode, basically through artificial means. And I find that really interesting based on what you were saying, because if you do take that back to kind of um, religious stereotypes, the fact that they're willing to kind of pigeonhole people into those just to meet it
Yeah.
becomes all the more all the more interesting to consider.
There was I guess it was one of the more recent, and if I say recent, 20 years ago, there was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. And it wasn't part of the original canon, but it was a remake or something. But I remember that it starts out in a typical way with the kids in a van and they're smoking grass, and the only thing the main character who's driving the van had done wrong was that he skipped out on he's AWOL he skipped out on the draft. He didn't want to go to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And they pick up the hitchhiker, and she's hiding the gun in her genitals, and pulls it out and blows her brains out. Blah blah blah.
That's either a very small gun or
Right. Yeah. Well, or she has a lot of room. Maybe it's a bag of holding. So what got me
so
about
many terrible jokes.
right? What got me
Chat,
about that?
terrible jokes, go.
What got me about that was that the crime that the main guy committed that brought all this horror down on his friends was him being a draft dodger. And I wasn't sure if that qualified, and so I felt like there was a rule broken there. And I'm still on the fence.
It definitely tells you something about the ethics and politics of whoever wrote that.
For sure.
Legata says, as an author, have you rubbed shoulders with other past TSR / Wizards of the Coast? WOTC. We don't name that company. Like Weiss and Hickman, Greenwood, Dennings, Salvatore, etc. So not
Sure.
not not only have you rubbed shoulders, but like have you rubbed shoulders with the big ones?
Yeah. So I've met Margaret a few times, and then I've been on several panels with Tracy Hickman. Ed Greenwood and I get along swimmingly. At one point, he has licked my elbow. There is a picture of me and him floating around on the internet of me holding his leg. Uh, I have probably spoken with Troy Denning, and I had breakfast with Bob Salvatore, and have spoken to him a couple of times. So yeah, Jim Louder, we should not forget him. He and I are very close friends. And then, of course, Bruce Cordell, and we're good buddies. And same with Monty Cook. So yeah, one of the things that and this was not really to serve any purpose other than just to kind of feed my inner fanboy, was to get to know as many people from the TSR early unnameable company era as possible, because these were the people who kind of shaped my views about fantasy and role playing. And it was always exciting for me to get to meet Skip Williams or Frank Menzer, and then I did not ever get to meet Gary, but I'm friends with his son Luke, and so getting to know a lot of those folks was very important to me. And I'm very grateful for the opportunities I've had to either work alongside or to just kind of get to know these people, because they
Yeah.
really are the events.
So the only reason we do not mention the company that shall not be named is I figure they get enough advertising on their own, and I try very, very hard to make sure that smaller companies get their time in the spotlight.
For sure, right? I mean, a lot of people are asking when I was going to do a fifth edition adaptation for Shadow the Demon Lord, and it's been always I
No.
don't want to. I just don't want to. And I know I'm leaving money on the table, but it's just like I just don't want to do it.
I discovered today that Traveler is getting a 5th edition. I was like,
Of
"Oh,
course it is.
I'm so disappointed." Mark, what are you doing? No.
Yeah.
He's on in a couple of months. I'm going to scold him for that.
Oh, good.
I'm sure that'll go over well. Hi, I know we've never met before, but what are you thinking?
What are you thinking?
Um, I have to know the Ed Greenwood elbow licking story. How did this happen?
It's always just he's a character, and he is, and so we always mock flirt with each other when we see each other, and it's kind of a game of chicken, and so usually we'll end up with him winning. Uh, so
He can
uh,
disturb you more than you can disturb him. That's impressive.
yeah. But Ed's fun. We did one of the last things I did. One of the last things I did with Wizards, and probably the reason why it was one of the last, was I was at Gen Con and we did a live play with Chris Perkins running, but it was Ed Greenwood and myself, and you can imagine putting the two of us in a group. It was a disaster for poor Chris, but he handled it well.
So I follow him on Twitter, and he once posted, people are always asking me, would I appear on this small channel, even though it's a small channel? And he said, I will appear on channels small or large, but I'm booked out like a year. You need to find younger, you know, up and coming people. And I responded and said, I have younger up and coming. I would still maim someone lightly to get you on my show.
Ed's wonderful. He's just a lot of fun.
He liked the comment, but he did not offer to come on.
Give it time. He'll warm up.
Um, so I could talk forever about Shadow the Demon Lord, but you have done a lot of other stuff. My husband is a huge fan of all things Warhammer. Can you talk a little bit about that? And maybe I'll actually get him to watch this video.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So Warhammer was that was a kind of a big moment, obviously, in my career. I played Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay First Edition way back in the day, and in fact, one of my dungeon master or game master for that game, I just found out that he passed away in December. So raise a glass to you, Doc. So I loved Warhammer. I loved the lore. I loved all the weirdness, and the just the kind of the creepiness that kind of bled off off the pages. So the opportunity to work on the game was obviously one I was not going to pass up. At the time, Chris was going to be taking over, was working on what was going to become Dark Heresy, and he was building a new system for that, entirely new system for that. And then, so he gave the reins for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay to me to kind of run and to develop. So I started on some like Forges of Null and an equipment book that I still am frustrated about, and then I started developing things, and so I got to work on more adventure content, and we did Warhammer Companion, and then we did Children of the Horned Rat and Knights Dark Masters. We did a bunch of really cool things for that game, including Realms of Sorcery and the later Tome of Corruption and the Tome of Salvation. So my job was to take the cool stuff that the writers were making and make it better, and then also generate some of those words myself. So the late great Steve D was one of my go-to guys. He too passed away just a few weeks ago. And Jody would, yeah, it's been a brutal year.
We're running into that stage of life, I'm afraid.
Yeah, but still, it seems like 50
it's really awful.
50 should not be the point where we're saying goodbye.
Well, 50 no, but we're still at the age where the old guard is.
Yeah, yeah.
I am doing a 1970s history show in a couple of months. That's the one that Mark is going to be on. It was astonishingly difficult to find 3 people that made games that are still well known that are still with us.
That's terrible.
It was awful. It was awful. I was Googling so many people and going, oh no.
Yeah. That's the great unfortunate thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love working in Warhammer. I had towards the end when Black Industries and Green Ronin split. I guess I had 30,000 words into 3rd edition Warhammer. Those files are somewhere hidden on a hard drive somewhere, probably 5 computers ago. But right around that time, then I guess when it went to Fantasy Flight, they launched the 3rd edition of the game, which was an interesting approach. And I've been nothing but support for what Catalyst is doing. Is it Catalyst? No, it's Cubicle 7. What Cubicle 7 has been doing. Andy Law for the first run was great. Yeah, so it's fun. I love Warhammer.
Hipster Savage wants to know, how do you enjoy the life of an author? Do you feel comfortable in the environment you've created for yourself? That's an interesting question.
That is an interesting question. That's a really complicated question, too. So one of the things that comes about this is that when you're working, so I work at home, I have an office in my house, and I have kind of a mini warehouse in the basement, and Studio 2 does all my fulfillment, and then, so we don't have actually a brick and mortar building. But the job one of the things I noticed early on was that the job really sent out tendrils to the rest of my house, and that there was no space where I was ever really away from it. There's always a game book somewhere or a die or something. And it was, and so I never felt like I was off. And that really troubled me for a long time. And especially when I was working in the 60 to 80 hour mark or range. As I've gotten older and have better separation, it's not as bad. There is, there's a side of this too that's like, well, it's fun for people to recognize me at conventions when I used to go to conventions, or to give talks like this is always a good experience. And those are some rewards to the process. But, a lot of it can be really thankless, right? I mean, you spend a lot of time by yourself, and luckily I can write while listening to music, so I can at least distract myself from the horror of my existence. And so it's a lot of isolation, and there's not a lot of water cooler talk either. It'd be nice to say that Monty and I just, talk, every 2 weeks, or Chris Pramus and I, get together online and just shoot the shit. But that just doesn't happen. We're all very busy, and we all have, and really me wasting, not wasting, me giving an hour to another designer and talk and hash out stuff is probably, I'd be better served just use that hour to actually produce. So yeah, it's pretty isolating. And then it also, the other cost that comes with this is that you always have to fight against the cynicism that seems to bubble up. It's like, oh, this again, right? How many
Mhm.
more Drow campaigns do I need to see before I want to gouge out my eyes? Uh, or as you were talking about Cthulhu, it's like, well, Cthulhu with cats, Cthulhu with dogs, Cthulhu with fairy tales, whatever. It's all, you've seen it all, and you're going to see it again, and you're going to see it again, and so it's hard to kind of fight against the dissatisfaction of not encountering something fresh. I mean, I guess I really ran into this when I was working on the dwarf book for Weird Wizard, because I was thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, I got to write a book about dwarves again. And not that I've ever written a book about dwarves, but I feel like I'm entering territory that has been really well explored. And how do I do this in a way that makes it exciting for me to write and also exciting for the audience to read? And so that is another way to kind of help fight off that cynicism.
Yeah. So I edit for indie role players a lot, and I'm lucky in the sense that I think that it allows me more access to new stuff. But
Sure.
yeah, I will read fantasy books and go, "Oh my God, this feels like the same book, the same fantasy scene I've read like 3 times."
Oh yeah, yeah. It's
And it's
it's
hard.
true.
Yeah, it's hard as an editor to have to tell writers like, that this is kind of been overplayed, right? Because you don't want to discourage new creators from creating, but you also want to encourage them to do something different. And it's
Right.
it's hard to find ways to phrase that.
And there's another that's another tough line to walk, because on the one hand, there's a reason why the cliches in fantasy lives are so important, right? We want a necromancer to live in that tower and raise undead to attack the town. We want a demi-lich to be lurking at the bottom of the tomb of horrors. We want giants to kind of organize, decide they're going to attack some other country. We want these things because they are what we believe is true about the games we're playing. But then at the same time, it's like, well, how far afield do you go, right? It's like, how do I take those tried and those kind of very tired ideas and bring new light to them in a way that makes it exciting? So it's like, you can change the motivation for the necromancer. Maybe he just doesn't hate living people, but maybe he's looking for the parts of the most beautiful ladies that live in this town so he can remake his dead wife or something along those lines. I mean, there's ways you can do it that kind of keep these things alive. And it's mostly, I think, trying to help authors find something exciting in those, I guess, boring ideas.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think there's anything boring about fantasy. It's sometimes like the way it's done. I tell
Yeah.
people all the time, I don't want to change your game. I just want to change how you talk about your game.
Oh, there. Yeah.
Legatus says, when it comes to handbooks, how much interaction do you have with the artists who create the imagery and who gets final say? I assume for your own books, that would be 100% on all fronts, but
Right.
how about when you're working for other companies?
Most times when working with other publishers, part of the job is to include an art order where you have kind of plugged in where you think pictures will go inside of the book. And so it falls to the writer usually to generate some words about what those images might look like. And then you fit that in with the size of the art piece that you're working with. So a quarter page, you typically have one figure, half page, two, maybe three. And then a full page, you can do up to 5 or 6. Or if you really want to get busy, you can do more. But usually it's once you've written your art descriptions, any kind of interaction I have with the artist goes through the art director, and so the art director may come back to me with questions, but typically the art director will just kind of pick up the ball and run if the art description is good enough. One of the things that I learned from my time with the 800-pound gorilla was that artists tend to like it when they have more freedom to do what they want, and so I have been since for my own stuff, I'm more about just trying to get across an idea of what the most fundamental elements that need to be in the piece, and then tell the artist to, like, I don't care what weapon he has. I don't care what spell they're casting. I don't really, I don't care what the scenery is, but I need some sort of wizard figure, and I want you to go nuts, dig deep, and find something cool. And so that has been, I think, part of the reason why a lot of our art for Shadow the Demon Lord and Weird Wizard has turned out so well is that I just give the artists the ability to be themselves.
I want to address this one. Christopher Hunter says it is unfair to criticize 5e for not doing horror well, as no edition of D&D, back to second at least, has not been suited to horror. Uh, that is completely on me. I skipped third and fourth completely, and therefore I have no experience other than AD&D did it okay, and 5e does it terrible.
I would argue that AD&D is probably more horror than any of the other ones, largely
Oh
because
yeah, absolutely.
your characters are so fragile, and there's so much weird stuff in the monster books. I mean, the first time I ran through Ravenloft, it was harrowing. Uh, I think, and second edition characters got a little tougher, and yes, Jack does actually kill it. He's awesome. Um, Second edition, with Ravenloft, the box set, I think it was a good effort made. I think the Mask of the Red Death was actually was pretty good too. The Bleak House adventure for Ravenloft that scarred my players. And I also would say that Return to Tomb of Horrors by Bruce Cordell was also a literally scarring for their characters. And yeah, it was. Yeah, so I mean, but I definitely get what you're saying. I think with third edition on, it becomes harder. You have to when I was working on the fourth edition Book of Vile Darkness, he was trying to find ways to actually scare the players and take things and get consequences that could not just be cured with spending a healing surge or taking your second wind.
Yeah.
And that was a challenge. But I think D&D now, and certainly has been last couple editions, has largely been about going on adventures, being heroes, kicking monster ass, taking their stuff, and starting your own business or whatever else these wacky kids are doing with the game these days.
I did a panel a while ago where we talked about the fact that D&D kind of started out as a heroic adventure and has now become a superhero game. That yes, it's set in a fantasy environment, but realistically, it matches up to superhero games better than it matches up to a lot of fantasy games now.
Sure.
Everyone can do everything.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's certainly true. I think that characters are so far and above. I guess there's the idea that characters are the separation between characters and ordinary folk has widened as the
Yeah.
editions have
Yep.
gone on. I mean, when you stopped having randomized hit points for first level and third edition, you already have a level of insulation that the poor farmer down the road is not going to have with his D4 hit die. Or D6 hit die, I can't remember which. With certainly characters, once we give the ability for characters to spam laser beams from their fingertips and do all sorts of at will stuff, they're also changing kind of the nature of reality around themselves. So it does. I definitely agree with the critique that these characters are not coming from the rank and file, but rather are more like Greek gods. I think that'd be probably closer to what I would think. Yeah.
So one of the things I really love about your well, there are two things that really attracted me to your game as far as the actual running goes. One is that you start out at level 0, and there's the whole idea that there are kind of points that choose your class as you go. But the other thing I really liked is that so many games start out with, well, I have 26 classes in my game. But once you've chosen your class, there's really only one set of skills you can take in order to make that class work well. Yours, on the other hand, is you get 4 classes to start with and then expand from there. So you get more choices as you go instead of less. Where did you come up with like reversing that kind of trope?
I was a huge fan of multiclassing in third edition. I thought that was one of the coolest parts of that game. I also think it gamified it too much, but it was a really neat way for you to individuate your character from the rest. During design on fifth edition, at one point we had. Let me back up. In D&D, there's always you build your character from reaching into different buckets, right? You pick out, you go to the race bucket or your species bucket and pick out elf or dwarf or human or whatever. You go to your class bucket, you pull out fighter, monk, whatever, and you have skills and feats and all these other different types of things, and you cobble together your character from all these decision points. And so your character is just assembled from all that. What I wanted to do with Demon Lord was that when you're just playing the game for the first time, there is no bucket. You're just a person, and then
Mm.
once you based on what you do in that first adventure and exploring the world, and if you find that you're fighting a lot or you find the weird magic wand or you're sneaky or whatever, that kind of you let the story kind of steer you to one of the four kind of channels or the novice paths, and each of those paths kind of reflects a different play style. And then layering on the expert and master paths on that allows you to both adapt your play style as you're having different experiences during the adventures you're playing through, but also gives you a lot more freedom to kind of build whatever you want, whatever you're imagining. And so that it rather than kind of give you, here's your track, and I'm going to give you one cool customization point within your track, and then you're just stuck on it for the rest of the way. I want to make sure that players are always getting something new, and then players are always getting something new, but then it gets to shift to get to select different menus of cool things they get as they play the game.
I I sort of love the idea too when I'm trying to present it to new players. So that's the other thing. Your game is one of two games that if I have brand new players that say, "Oh, I always wanted to learn how to role play, but I could never find a group and it's really, going into a group of experienced players is kind of awkward." So I will put together teams. If I get 4 or 5 people, 6 people that say, I always want to learn how to role play, uh, I will put together games specifically for new players. Um, but I always run either your game or Numenera, which you have also written for, um, because I find them so much easier to teach people. It's not about teaching people the rules. Anybody can learn the rules, but learning how to role play is very difficult for some people.
Right, right.
And your game is really excellent for learning how to role play, not just roll dice.
Giving enough cues at the beginning helps, and then also just getting out of the way by not throwing a bunch of rules at new players also helps, because when you don't have any, one of the things that I always fight against is I don't want people to have to look at their character sheets all the time, like scrutinize their sheets for what they can do to have the situation. I want
Hmm.
them to use their imagination to solve the problem, and so that by not having it in your character sheet makes it really easy for you to say, well, what can I do? Well, whatever you want to do. You don't have to, there's not a widget on your sheet that says, do you have permission to have fun?
Yeah. Um, I do find, so the first group that I started running through Dungeons of the Damned, I love the fast, slow turn taking, but I find that virtually we tend to get hung up and confused as, wait, which round are we on? Is that is it easy? I rarely get to run in person. Was that designed specifically for in-person running in mind?
It helps. It helps to have the physical token or some other object that can say, I've taken my turn by throwing it out in the middle of the table. We have turn tokens, or I think they're out of print, but I have a secret stash that I need to get back out there. Um, I think the thing is that with fast slow is designed is to get you to a point where you're going to make those choices whether you go fast or slow in the first round or so, and then you're all going fast, and so you don't really worry about who's going when and whether or not you've gone, because if you've already run up to the monster and you're swapping blows, you don't have to. You're probably not going to go slow. You're probably going to try to beat out the monster before it has a chance to hit you back. Um, I recommend if you are, yeah, I don't know. I don't do a lot of virtual play because I'm an old crusty guy. But yeah, it's one of the things we did with Weird Wizard to kind of shake that up was that now there aren't fast and slow turns anymore. It's just if you want to go before the monsters go, you just use your reaction to take the initiative, and so that means it just pushes you ahead of them.
My
And so
my
people know that.
brother my brother lives in Southern California, virtual play of your game is the only way I've gotten to like interact with him at all in the last 2 years. So
Oh, good. Yeah, that's great.
keeping
I'm all
family
for it.
together by murdering demons.
That's the way to do it.
I was actually going to ask this one next. Legata said if you've done work in Dark Sun, Gamma World, Forgotten Realms, Warhammer, Song of Ice and Fire, or Fire and Ice. I can never remember which order that goes in. If there was one or two settings you would love to create something for, which ones? So something you have not done yet, I assume. He's
Yeah,
talking.
yeah.
If you could have your pick of IPs,
Boy, that's a tall
you've
one.
also done what? Judge Dredd.
I did an introduction for Judge Dredd. Uh,
Have you done
uh,
Hellboy, or is that?
I did an adventure for Hellboy. Yeah, dug
Yeah,
that one
I
out.
think you. I think you. My husband has like 3 great passions in life, and you have covered all of them.
Wonderful.
Sorry, my husband has 3 great passions in life other than me, and I think you.
Well, if I was going to choose one, and I'll choose one for D&D, and then I'll choose one elsewhere. Greyhawk is my jam. That's my setting.
I
I
miss
love it.
Greyhawk.
I miss it too, and I'm glad. I'm just so glad that they revived the setting for the D&D 2024 books. I don't know if that's going to translate into anything, but they at least did the right thing by putting that in there. The other setting, the other thing, you mentioned Cult, and I really like Cult a lot. That is, I've never played it, but I've got it, and it intrigues me. That
Which
would be one
edition?
of the most recent one, the giant.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, 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 don't do it.
No, I probably people have asked me if I'd be willing to write for them, and it's like there's no time, there's no chance I'm going to have an opportunity to write for Cult. Yeah, so that's something like that. I'm not really sure. And then if we go outside of that into literature, probably I don't know. I have to dig.
If
Yeah, something
I
really weird.
so I always joke I write nonfiction and I edit fiction. If I were good at writing fiction, it would be the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant,
Oh wow.
because Thomas Covenant himself is a pretty. I mean, he's designed to be the everyman. It's the surroundings around him that are really the story,
Yeah.
and all of the characters around him are like tailor made for for like being player character types, for being classes or races or whatever you want to
Oh
call
yeah.
them.
I think my druid or warden, probably the warden, draws direct inspiration from the warden figure and the Thomas Covenant books as well. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was
uh Ultra TTRPGer says there's a Hellboy RPG.
yeah, there is. Pretty much, if you can name an IP that's out there, there's probably an RPG for it right now.
I've always been shocked that there is not a Thomas Covenant. He is very hard for people to read nowadays, though, because people don't like that kind of. I mean, he's designed to be a character you are not supposed to like at first.
Yeah, and I'm
And
not sure that
you are supposed to actually not be sure if he's going to do the right thing by the end, and
yeah,
the only way to do that in a heroic book is to make him really unlikable.
right. Yeah, and I'm not sure he ever quite becomes anybody I really enjoy. I read the first 2 trilogies, and I went back to get that started his last run through, and I got through the second book, and I was out. But yeah, somebody
Hey,
mentioned, yeah,
I have exciting news. I made the joke earlier about how having you on and talking about Warhammer might actually get my husband to listen to this stream. Guccifer the Morning Honk is in fact my husband.
well, look, hello.
So yes, you are the first person ever to get my husband to watch one of these live. We have a player who would not play any RPG except D&D. We got him to try Shadow of the Demon Lord. He loved it. He will eagerly awaits the next session. He definitely likes it better than D&D, and he gets really upset if I want to run anything else now.
Well, that's awesome. Hooray, mission accomplished.
I actually have several people who have now really gotten addicted to either this or I also ran Night, which is a French game once.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, between those two, I have converted many, many people. Hunter says, Hunter says concerning the Hellboy. Why am I just now hearing about this? There you go. You have learned something new. There is a Hellboy RPG.
I just remembered the setting I want to do. I want to work on. Do you remember the French role playing miniatures game Confrontation?
I do not.
They had a role playing game called Cadwallon that was just beautiful. And unfortunately, the translation to the English translation left a little bit to be desired. I was never able to actually parse it, but it was always a world that I wanted to explore because it was so just dripping with goodness.
So the question I had wanted to ask you was, out of everything you've written that is not your own creation, what is your favorite? Single, and I'm not talking like IP. I'm talking like your single favorite book.
I don't know. I have a problem with
Which of your
doing
children do you like the best?
right. So I probably am most in love with Shadow of the Demon Lord. That's my baby. That was my big cathartic experience. But if it was a book that somebody else owns, Tome of Corruption for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay was my favorite.
So I am not the minis person in our household. So, awesome husband, if you are still listening, have you heard of the French minis game? Because I'm curious. I mean, I assume not because it is not in our house. And there are so many minis in our house. I do not get this reference. I am assuming you can explain it to me.
A Hateful Defecation. So there is a rank 2 spell in the Forbidden Tradition of Shadow of the Demon Lord that causes a target to poop themselves with hate and violence. There's also a spell same tradition called Desire's End, which causes the genitals to fall off, and great consternation that results.
All right, so you're the reason for the ongoing cartoon joke about ICAST testicular torsion or contortion.
Well, maybe, right? Maybe. Hateful Defecation is definitely mine, and I am glad to have given birth to it because I think the world is a little better because of it.
Shoot, that led me to another question, and I've completely lost it now. I'm thinking about minis now, and many, many jokes. Sorry, cat distraction. Which game? He's wondering which French minis game. He missed which one you're talking.
Confrontation.
Confrontation.
And the role playing game that was based on it was called Cadwallon.
I said there are a few French minis games. Haven't played any of them though. That explains why they're not in our. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. There are minis in our house minis games in our house that have never been played. When my husband and I first moved in together, I told him that the minis had to at least leave the bedroom because it was creepy. Where do you still do work for other companies at all, or is
Not
it
really.
solely?
Every once in a while I'll do like an introduction or a small piece, but it's adding something to my schedule is really tough because I'm working so far ahead and I've got plans for years out.
You've got 50 projects in the works.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably even more than 50 projects, but it is. I don't even want to do the math. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it's like over. It's a lot. It's a
count. Now it's a lot.
Yeah, it's just a lot. Yeah, but I did. I think I did some work with Matt Forbeck on his Shotguns and Sorcery role playing game. I did the rules for the Cipher version of that game, and then I did development work on the 5e compatible version of that, and then, but I guess right after I left Wizards, I did some work with Monty on Numenera and the Strange. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask about that. Let me get to Hunter's question first. Isn't there a Hellboy RPG that is not 5e based? I thought there was an older Hellboy RPG.
I seem to remember there was a much older version of that game, but I couldn't tell you who published it and when it came out. I'm thinking it was like 90s.
I think we probably have a copy in our house. We are old here. So Numenera is the other game. I always say you are my favorite uh dark fantasy, and Numenera is my favorite, and I'm never quite sure how to categorize it. I always say kind of like fantasy. What do they call it? Sci fantasy? Is that what they call it
Yeah,
nowadays?
sure. That
Um,
worked.
but I'm not familiar, despite the umpteen million Numenera books I have, I'm not familiar with your writing for them. And it wasn't until I ran across Monty Cook doing the posting about you were going to be writing for them that I even realized you were involved.
Yeah, I worked on their big equipment book, the Oddities book that came out shortly after. It was like maybe the second, third book after, and I did a standalone adventure which takes you into a version of hell, which was kind of fun to write. It was. I found it a bit challenging to shift gears. Monty, Bruce, and I worked really, really well together on fifth edition. We were a team. We could get to the point where we were able to um, finish each other's sentences almost, and there were a lot of in jokes and stuff that came out of that. But Monty went so far away from the kind of the rules density that went into D&D and even D&D talk that it took me a few minutes to figure out how to do that.
Hmm.
So it was a good learning experience for me.
How do you enjoy the whole sentence structure character development thing?
Oh, it's great. It was so great. I wish I had thought of it first. We had you can find lots of elements of our conversations in both my books and Monty's books, at least at the start of both lines. And because we spent a lot of time talking about role playing games and how we interact with them, and there was one point where we were talking about feats in fifth edition, and I had suggested that a feat should be like a mini class in the sense that it would be something you would append to the name Conan. So you remember the old Conan books, Conan the Buccaneer, Conan the Destroyer. It would be it would be the whatever that comes afterwards would
Hmm.
be the kind of thing that would run with that. So that I think that Monty's way of building a character by having a sentence is genius. It's one of the smartest things that happens. That's in that is all the cipher stuff. I love it.
Hmm. Goofus says, when you get to be a player, what are some things you enjoy doing or experiencing? I guess we should preface that with, do you ever get to be a player?
I do not anymore. We back in the day during pandemic, which was probably the last time I did any kind of regular role playing. We were playing online, and we played a lot of Delta Green, but we didn't. I discovered that my battle against cynicism is I often lose, and so I'm not a good player. Um, and especially if there's beer involved, I'm a terrible player. Um, and yeah, it's what it's just I don't know. So you see how the sausage is made. It's hard to want to have sausage. Um, but I do like to play games. I like to play cooperative games quite a bit, board game stuff. But for role playing games, I'm always looking. As far as the kind of thing I like to do is, I'm more of a wizard type guy. I like the toolbox approach. I like having a bunch of different pieces to play, lots of different toys to play with.
Hmm. Wizard as in character class or as in the company?
Oh, as a character class.
Yeah. I am notorious for my loathing of magic in all systems, which is why I have not played the Weird Wizard.
Well, Weird Wizard's magic is kind of an evolution of what's going on in Shadow the Demon Lord, so it's very close.
New person in the chat whose name I cannot pronounce. I ran those pandemic games for Rob. He is absolutely not a terrible player.
Thank you, Chris.
So, so Kubla disagrees. And Kubla, welcome to the herd. Are there any ways to extend the usefulness and campaigns for old RPGs?
For sure. I think the biggest tragedy is that when a new edition of any game comes out, there's this thought that all the stuff that came out before is now useless. When you could, there's no reason why you couldn't use. I'm sorry for using D&D again, but there's no reason why you couldn't use information from the Al Qadim setting and plug that into your fifth edition game or your fourth edition game or your third edition game, because the setting lore is still valuable. It's the mechanics that obviously have to change. But usually, I think if we kind of unclench a bit, we can find there's usually something that will fit what some other game has done before. Now, there are some games that are really tricky, like the Joroon game. Remember that, with a weird, creepy dude on the cover healing somebody who's dying? Was it Sky Ships of Joroon? Is that right? That's a game that's out of print, and I don't know what I can do with it except play those older games.
I mean, I think there's kind of a love for older games coming back, isn't there? Legatus, actually, next question, surprisingly. There are many people who enjoy older RPGs. What can you say to convince us to buy newer stuff? Or can you, as we are having too much fun?
I don't want to tell anybody that they have to stop playing Twilight 2000 First Edition, right? I mean, one of the things that's great about the older games is that they have rough spots. Like if you ever try to use a shotgun in First Edition Top Secret, you'll know what I'm talking about. It is, or try to fence in that game. Whoa. Um, but we work around those things, right? Because you love the game so much that you've either figured it out or you come up with some other way to solve those problems. When looking at a new role playing game, I mean, especially if you're a second edition fan, I still think that if you were playing second edition all the way since second edition, you'd probably hard pressed to have played everything that came out for that game and exhausted it because there was so much content for it. Um, yeah, I think that going to new stuff though is an opportunity for you to mine new and cool ideas to bring to your older games. Um, I think, like, if we were going to talk about Demon Lord, the Dungeons of Damned stuff, there's no reason you couldn't run that with GURPS or uh, Dragon Bane or whatever role playing game you want to play with, because the setting, the look, the mood, the tone is all there. Um, so yeah, I think you can definitely mine from new stuff, even if you're playing old stuff.
Yeah, I very frequently I'm getting to the point where there are too many games I love to run. Um and I've gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, I have to like chill out because otherwise I'll quit my regular job and do nothing but run games. Um but I still love reading new stuff and being like, oh, I'm going to borrow this for this game and I'm going to borrow this for this game. And yeah, I think I still buy new stuff because I want to use it for old stuff.
Yeah,
Um, but it, I guess too, if if Legatus is considering your Shadow the Demon Lord as new stuff, um, I don't know that it's terribly new, in the grand scheme of things, but
yeah, like people who play Demon Lord and look at new Weird Wizard stuff new Weird Wizard content that comes out. All that stuff can be just with a little bit of work can be used with Demon Lord. It gives you a way to expand that game. Um, and there are differences between Demon Lord and Weird Wizard and Punk Apocalyptic and when the Wolf comes. Uh, they're all have their own special stuff, but there's enough in common that you can pretty much cross over.
ooh, I have been looking at When the Wolf Comes. Matt
Yeah,
Funcool says there are too many games. I disagree because I think role playing games are like books. If you think you don't like to read, it's just that you haven't found the right book. If you think you don't like to role play, it's just that you haven't found the right game yet.
Yeah, I've got shelves and shelves of tabletop RPGs that I have still yet to play, and I need to get around to doing it.
So as far as the cynicism thing goes, I find so I do tend to run a lot of horror games, and before I started editing, I had 24 years in the mental health field where I dealt mostly with people who were criminally insane.
Mm,
So I can probably challenge you for the cynicism thing.
yeah,
uh, so I tend to run horror, and I play all really light games. Like Paranoia is the heaviest game I think I enjoy playing.
I have so many fond
Tune
memories.
Tune is Tune is coming out with a new with a
Right,
new edition. I'm so excited.
I backed it.
Woohoo! I had friends that backed it. I'm hoping to get it to swipe a copy. They discovered that they could convince our local friendly gaming store to get the like the store bundle for the same price as it would cost them to get like two copies.
Oh,
So
good. Yeah,
the store is now going to have an extra two copies because they just gave the store the money and had them get it. So the store's now going to have an extra two copies, and one of them is going in my pocket.
definitely. Yeah, that's a good. That's a good. The retail option is always a good one.
Retail, yes, that's what I was trying to think of, the retail option. Um, I was talking to my Barrows and Borderlands pals. We think we need more settings and adventure for the game currently available, more than new games. Yeah, I mean, you said yourself that you really like putting out new settings and kind of smaller adventures for Shadow the Demon Lord as much as possible.
Yeah, that does kind of put a finger on one of my big bugaboos. I think that there is a proliferation of rule books that have the ideas of the role playing game in them, but then nothing really to use them with.
Hmm.
And I'm not talking about new classes, new content. I think even for people who make their own adventures, I think having at least a few published adventures to give somebody an idea of what an adventure would look like is always a good idea. So I probably lose a couple $100 every time I publish an adventure because I'm never going to sell enough to make it back. For art and map and editing and all that stuff. But every time I put an adventure, I'm almost guaranteed to get a few more sales of the core book. And part of that is because people feel like the game's supported. And I think that
Hmm.
I 100% agree that every game that's out there that's kind of running needs to produce short scenarios to show off what the game can do. And the more you can put out, the better. And I think it should be. It's just the cost of doing the cost of doing business.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think smaller companies sometimes have trouble on Kickstarter because people are like, well, if I buy this core book, will anything else ever come after?
Yeah,
Night, which was one of the other games I mentioned, is a French game, and it's very well supported. But other than the core book and the bestiary, almost everything's in French, and I don't read French.
yeah.
And they have not translated anything else. Um,
Mm.
Now that has enough stuff, and again, I tend to not be big on. Um, I like to make my own adventures, but it would be nice to have a couple, supplements to get really in depth on, specific areas of the world, for instance.
Yeah, one of the things
Uh,
I'm shifting gears on with the Demon Lord Engine worlds. We've done Shadow of the Red Moon and Godless, and we have what's the other one? Abaddon, the Angel of the Void, and we're coming out to with Kill is something I'm doing in 2 or 3 assignments. All of these are going to be the same way, where we give out chunks of the game, but then the adventures both serve as gazetteers and scenarios. So you get more lore about the world and characters that inhabit these various places mentioned in the game, and it's still giving you a storyline you can screw around with.
do you ever find that the more, like when you're turning out adventures that fast or settings that fast, do you find you have a harder time coming up with new ideas?
Not really. There's only been one time recently where I actually had overlapping ideas, and they both involved harvesters. The harvesters and Demon Lord are a group of people who extend their lifespans by stealing organs and skin from other folks and then replacing their own failing body parts.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're a neat monster and they're kind of gross. And they exist in Demon Lore. They also exist in Shadow of the Red Moon. So I had an adventure set in Shadow of the Red Moon, which I think is coming out Monday, called Skin of the Game, where it has harvesters who are going to the world of demon lords, stealing people and bringing them back to the Red Moon, and then carving them up. And then so there's that one thing. And then in Orc Wars, we have another instance of the harvesters doing a similar thing, but but doing it this way lets me show off more of the harvesters' activities and lets me kind of fool around with their mythology a bit. So even though they are kind of similar ideas as far as what the adventures involve, they show it from two different perspectives. Um, Luckily, I build my world so that I can do there. I can layer on more stuff. So I will go. I'll usually paint the using this. Sorry, when I'm building a setting, I'll usually go in broad strokes first, and that way I can go back and then zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, so that all that stuff kind of explodes out of the 5 or 6 sentences that I gave it in the core rulebook.
Mm-hmm. Um, we're getting a little bit close to where I wanted to wind up, so I didn't take too much of your time. Chad, do you have any other burning questions? I have a couple others that I've been holding off on that I'm nosy about, but I want to give the chat a chance to ask theirs. Um, while they're hopefully typing, I do want to ask. So, like I said, I do a lot of editing, and I get a lot of questions about how you find artists, how you find editors. Do you print your own stuff? Do you hire it out? How does the external not writing stuff work?
Right. So editing. We'll start with editing. Typically, it's word of mouth. It's people I've met in the business. So I worked with Miranda Horner during fifth edition before, and she came in to help in writing in some places and also did some editing work for me. Jennifer Clark Wilkes, also from my time working with her at Wizards, she has been a huge help on trying to get on keeping the game clean. Um, I had, let's see, then of course the late great Kim Mohan was my buddy and also my go-to editor guy. He and I worked back and forth. We had a really great way of working together. But then we also worked with more recently Sue Wineland, used to be of Mal Havoc Press. She is fantastic, and she's been taking the Weird Wizard line. And then I can't not shout out to Jay Spite, who is my proofreader. The last line of defense against garbage, and he kind of he covers it all. As far as the artists go, I had a small stable of artists that Hal Mangold from Green Renine, who did the layout for the core rulebook. He was able to set me up with some of the initial artists, and I've worked with some of these people going all the way back, like Jack Kaiser, who was mentioned earlier. We've been working together for 12, 13 years. I mean, 12 years. And then more recently, I've been working with some new folks who come to me by way of just cold calling, like dropping me an email. Vladimir Lubin and Rain Ong, and then of course Brett Martin, who's been around forever and he's awesome. So yeah, but I have just usually just a couple of people I work with because we're getting one piece of art per adventure or a couple pieces for a longer source book. So yeah, it's um, I kind of lean on the same people over and over again.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it seems like once you've got a good stable of people, that would make sense.
Yeah,
Um, it does make it a little harder to break into the industry, but the problem is there are so many people that are kind of scam artists that
right,
it
right.
makes people leery of hiring those of us that are tiny. Um, I belong to a Discord where there are regularly like art scammers who are constantly trying to join and
Mm.
like sell art to people. And they have they have a beautiful way of basically saying like you're stuck in this one area until you can prove to us that you actually exist and you're not a bot and you're your real artist.
Yeah.
And if they
Well,
don't do it within 24 hours, they get booted. But it's constant. Like this is constant flux. Um,
yeah. There's always a. I think it's been very disheartening with the rise of AI as a tool that a lot of people I work with are really struggling now because a lot of because it's just so much. It's obviously cheaper to steal art than it is to actually pay someone to create it, and so it is. It's been a thing, and I'm more. And so whenever somebody accuses me of using AI art, I just get incandescent because I pay pretty good rates
mhm.
for what we produce, and I these are people I trust and I work with very closely, and I know they're genuine. So it just, but I think we're now also trigger happy about trying to shoot down somebody's trying to find out where the bad actors are. It's we're losing sight of where the where the good actors are.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking more along the lines of people who just plain old take the money and run, because there are a
Sure.
lot of those. Like they're scam artists for both editing and art are getting more and more common, I think.
Yeah,
I
we
get
oh
I get a lot of people that are really hesitant about hiring me, despite the fact that I don't get paid until after a job, uh,
yeah, that's the
and
thing, right?
and um, and I have a pretty decent resume. Um, but people just they've been burned before, and
Right.
Hunter, yeah, I've gotten a couple of error issues with the messages. I've just had to retype them. Um, but yeah, it's real easy to just say, well, I'm just going to stick to these. So the art that is the background on this was done by a guy named Jeff Koch. And I really like it, and I will
Yeah.
probably, when I'm ready for a different background, go back to the same the same person.
Yep.
Because I like his style, and it was reasonably affordable. Um, yes, Witch Queen is on the same server where the art scammers are very frequent.
Mm.
Uh, so I have not played Weird Wizard. Again, I am not, and I haven't run it. Again, I'm not a huge Magic fan. How similar is it to Shadow of the Demon Lord to run?
Almost exactly the same. There are a few changes to, in order to make the characters feel more heroic and more higher fantasy than they are in Demon Lord. Characters get a few more things to worry about. We use paths deliver damage dice to your character, and you can use those pools of damage dice to boost your attacks or split them up to do multiple attacks. Magic is somewhat simplified. You get talents and you get spells, but the spells are broken into novice, expert, and master spells rather than be broken down by rank. We already mentioned how the initiative system works, where you just take the initiative by using your action to do so. We give the warrior based characters lots of toys to play with, and we open up to everybody. So you can do all sorts of attack maneuvers and do fun stuff with that without having to invest or without siloing those things off into paths. So it plays really similar. Monsters are probably tougher. The game is just uses big pools of dice. One of the things I wanted to do with this game too was that I love the idea of rolling 30d6, and so that's you might throw big piles of dice at the table to kind of really get that sense that, oh my gosh, something huge is happening. So that's all throughout the game. But and they actually are the worlds are similar in the sense that they're both attached to the void, so that the Earth and the Shadow of the Demon Lord world, it touches upon the void, which is a gap between realities, and then Earth, spelled with an E, is the world of the Weird Wizard, and that is a place where the Demon Lord hasn't really cast his gaze yet, but most likely you can expect that it's gonna happen at some point.
Hmm. Um, if there is a player that is not huge on Magic, is it literally just wizards, or is it?
No. All you still have the same four options. You can go warrior, rogue, priest, and magician. for your novice paths. Then there are the idea of the weird wizard is the weird wizard's this dude modeled on myself, sort of, but he probably drinks more than I do and has more cats than I have. But he kind of showed up on this place in this world at some point in the past.
I've seen your cat pictures. That's saying something.
Yeah, so you right. So the weird wizard comes from Earth and probably elsewhere, but he takes over this place as part of the continent, and he kind of closed it off and fooled around over there for a bit. Well, he disappears, and so there's now a kind of a vacuum in the power balance, and so now things are kind of moving to kind of take over his place. So the weird wizard is not really more of a threatening figure; it's more like the shadow of what he kind of leaves behind his his influence, but without actually being in the game. Yes, drunken, angry Elminster is spot on.
Okay, I should have thought of that because, Shadow the Demon Lord doesn't mean that the Demon Lord is consistently present and you have to play him. But I
Right.
have to admit, I saw Shadow of the Weird Wizard and I kind of assumed that meant you had to play wizards, which is why I haven't looked at it as closely.
Yeah, I
Um,
think you'll dig it. It's certainly not the Ars Magica route where you have a one wizard type character, but rather it's more of it's he's just more of kind of a specter that kind of
mhm.
hangs around in the background.
Okay. That's really good to know because I have kind of it's been sitting in my like wish list box for quite some time. But I hadn't pulled the trigger yet because I wasn't really sure. I couldn't find anybody who knew what it was like. But then nobody knew what Shadow of the Demon Lord was like until I introduced it to them. My uh my next bucket list I want you to know is to you said you don't do conventions anymore. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, I'm still on sabbatical. The last one I went to was the show in Ann Arbor. Why can't I remember it? UPCon? No, that's not right. Anyway, it was a great show. It just I things have been really complicated for me over the last since before the pandemic, and so I've been
We have
going
all
out of
those
town.
cats.
I got all the cats, and then my wife's parents passed away, and there was just a lot of stuff kind of going on that made it difficult. And so when I was doing fifth edition, I was going out to Seattle every month or every other month, and so it's just been hard. So I've been kind of really taking valuing my free time such that I have it in my kind of non-public faced non-public persona,
Hmm.
kind of embracing that. But yeah, I'm probably going to go back and start hitting conventions again, just not anytime in the immediate future.
Well, that makes me feel better because at some point my bucket list is to get a physical copy of Shadow of the Demon Lord and get you to sign it.
For sure.
And possibly pick up the Numenera book that you wrote because I do love that game.
Yeah, love to. Even better, I could run a Shadow of the Demon Lord game for you and really gross you out.
Uh, it's hard to gross me out, but I welcome the challenge. I welcome the
Perfect. The gauntlet is thrown.
challenge. There we go. The problem is that you have cats and I have goats,
I love
and
Go.
they are also hard to work around in order to make it to conventions. I was supposed to get to Page this year, and between car trouble and goat trouble and financial issues stemming from those two things, I never made it. So PortCon is the only thing I'm going to make this year, and I'm very upset about that. But
Mm.
hopefully Page next year, and maybe one other. That's my goal for next year. So Zapchance says. I think you answered this one earlier, but Zapchance was not here at the time. If you like to listen to music while writing, if you have any favorite snacks or drinks when writing, that you did not cover.
Sure. Yeah, so I do listen to music. I'm a huge black metal fan, death metal as well, and then every flavor in between. Now, when I say black metal, I don't like the Nazi metal, but everybody else is great. So give me mayhem, give it all to me, all of it. So I usually use albums as kind of a timer. So I'll work for the duration of an album. For example, I have the new Liturgy of Death queued up for tomorrow morning by Mayhem, and it lasts 49 minutes. So I will work for those 49 minutes and then go see Cats after that, and then come back and put the next disc in. I have been listening to Opeth while writing. I certainly do, as well as older bands like Morbid Angel and Cannibal Corpse, and all of them. All of them. Yeah, so I'm a big metal freak. Then, as far as drinks, I'm a big coffee freak in the mornings. I don't drink 2 pots anymore. I'm down to about a cup and a half. And I do know the Who. I have at least one of their albums.
I was gonna say the Who is what I tend to listen to while writing. I can't listen to anything I know the words to, or I'll stop and start singing instead of writing. So
Yeah, like I get that, right? I find myself, if I'm listening to clean vocals, I sometimes get distracted, so which is why I kind of lean towards the heavier and more extreme flavors of music. Um, no, so back to, I'm trying this thing called Rise, try to help me lose some pounds. It's like a mushroom coffee hybrid. I hate it, so that's probably not going to last. I don't really snack much during the day, but if I'm really angry, I will drink Amstel Light while working until I get too drunk to write, and then I usually sign off after that. That and vodka.
so I'm a bourbon fan. I will occasionally drink really high end vodka when I am not broke. Um, but bourbon is my thing, and I find that when I have writer's block, bourbon is a wonderful way to get over that. Do you find that maybe it helps loosen the inhibitions some if you get?
Yeah, like when I don't. Luckily, I've never had much writer's problem with writer's block. There was one time I was working on a Thieves World book, and we had a manuscript from a writer, and we couldn't make the manuscript work. And I was trying. I was Lynn Abbey didn't like what we were direction the original manuscript had taken, so she and I took it upon ourselves to rewrite the book, and it was a challenge. But there was one point I got so upset and I could not make any progress after I deleted the same 300 words 20 times. I threw up and laid down for a while, and then finally got myself back up to finish it. Um, but now I don't put myself in that situation. If I get that frustrated, that's why they make Malort. Malort is the great palate cleanser. If I ever get to a point where I cannot come up with what I need, it is going to be Malort. And in fact, I found I can drink a liter of Malort in one sitting,
Oof.
which is very
Uh,
bad for me. I'm sure my doctor's appointment is going to go great, but we'll see.
yeah, yeah. I So you talked about having to make dwarves interesting for the 30th time for the for people. I have to figure out how to make parasites in goats sound interesting for the 30th time.
Mm,
So that's
yum.
where my writer's block comes
Yeah,
from.
yeah. Whoa.
um, which is why I am not. It is hard to gross me out.
I'd say.
um, okay, well, it is 2 minutes of 7. And this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much to Rob and to the chat. Rob, tell us where you're going to be, what you're going to be working on, what's coming out, and where people can find you.
We'll start with where you can find me. I'm still on Facebook, and I'm on Blue Sky. Just search my name. And then I have a very small Instagram presence, but it's only to post cat pictures, pictures of beer, and whatever book I just finished. Uh, let's see. And then we have the www.schwalbentertainment.com. That's my website, and all the cool stuff that lives there. And then we sell all of our products through Studio 2 Publishing and Drive Through RPG. Big happy shout outs to both of those companies who do a great job and keep my cats fed and my beer coming. Big things I'm working on now is that we've got the Godless Novice Player's Guide for the Demon Lord engine. It gives you novice paths and some equipment and stuff all tailored for novice characters. That's going to be fun. And then we have two more episodes of the Orc Wars campaign. I'm 1,000 words away from finishing Weird Menagerie Volume 1. And then I start Kill, which is the subtitle is Mold on the Skin of This World, where you play gritty survivors who have to keep a village alive in the apocalyptic days of this dying world. It should be fun. It's even darker than Demon Lord.
Goofus says, how do you feel about sacrificing goats?
Sacrifice tofu, not goats.
Um, so you mentioned you mentioned a love of beer several times, and I forgot to ask, what is your go-to of choice?
When I'm slumming it, it's Amstel Light. That's my beer of choice. I can drink usually between 8 and 12 and not get wrecked. When I'm feeling fancy, I'll probably do Guinness. I'm pretty simple. I can't stand IPAs.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I I rarely drink beer, but I always joke that when I do, I will not drink a beer I can see through, because
Yes.
beer used to be a food group, and it should have stayed that way.
Should have. If I could have beer for every meal, I would take it. Dragon's milk is great. Agreed.
Yes, Dragon's Milk is amazing. That is my favorite. There are a couple of like European dark beers I really like. So,
I also like the Trappist beer quite a bit, but I get in trouble when I drink it, so I try not to.
well, we all have that one thing we probably shouldn't
Yep,
too
that's right.
get get too
Rumple Mix
into.
is also on that list. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, thanks
I
for having me.
I am the Eclectic Goat. You can find me on Discord, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm pretty sure I've forgotten one because I almost always do. Um, in about an hour, I do want to put a shout out to Jacob Ironside says light beer is gross. To Jacob Ironside is doing the Ghost in the Darkness. I was going to be on, but the day got away from me, and I am absolutely exhausted, so I'm probably not going to make it. Sorry, Jacob. But everybody should go watch that because that movie is amazing. I absolutely love that movie, and I'm bummed to not be there. Next Monday, we're going to be doing game reviews. I had to move some stuff around. I had stuff planned for the spring that I realized was going to land on the days that goats were supposed to give birth. So so the schedule is a little bit up in the air, but we will be doing a game review next Monday. And instead of a Goat's Notes tomorrow, I am going to be dropping my thoughts on Iron Lung, which I saw today. It's I didn't want to give any spoilers, but wow, that's all I'm going to say to that. Yes, here is Jacob's link. And Tuesday through Friday, I do game streams. Tomorrow, I am going to be starting an experiment for the rest of the week doing demos for indie games that are coming out. I like to push indie stuff as much as possible, so I thought I would start doing indie games in the hopes of coaxing some of you into getting into the real thing. If you watched today's, you got to hear me squeal like a girl live on YouTube, which, is not is not normally my thing. So I have already forgotten what the name of the game was, but it was in Perceptum. It's very creepy. The graphics are amazing. Everybody should check it out. And we are going to hopefully be finding some more either very good or very bad demos to cover. The very bad ones being for amusement value. I think that is everything that I have coming up. Yes, I know I am way behind. I am still working on the Watership Down book versus movie, but the rest of the world keeps getting away from me. So that will come out at some point, someday. I promise, eventually. In the meantime, everyone have a great night. Go check out Jacob's show in about 55 minutes from now. And happy headbutting.
It's a fucking goat! Eclectic Goats got videos of indie authors and cinema love. A passion for the weird and the strange. She's snappily dressed and only slightly deranged. Come and meet the Eclectic Goat, lover of classics and whiskey notes, disciple of horror and the written word. Happy headbutting, come join the herd. Shows might be a little improper. We've got real zombie, fake wizards, the otter, pizza in one hoof, glass in the other, deciding which role-playing games we will cover. Come and meet the eclectic goat, lover of classics and whiskey notes, disciple of horror and the written word, happy head-butting, come join the herd. Got a thing for black and white screens, crappy horror with low budget scenes, choose on the history, spits out the law.